Hello everyone, my name's FlareBlitzed and welcome to Yearning for Spring. This is a game about a city girl who loves snow, goes on a vacation to a snow mountain to hike the trails and soak in the serene late winter landscape. She meets Camellia, a rigid woman with an air of mystery. When she wanders off the trail, stuff happens. What kind of stuff? Well, there's only one way to find out, and also we've got a checklist here. So we've got warm layers of snow, check. Granola bars, check. Cocoa mix, check. A big wholesome heart ready for love, check. I don't know why people flinch when they hear the word gay, because honestly, it's not a bad word at all. Let's see. A large beat-up SUV pulls up into a deserted parking lot. Also, there's no sound, by the way. Like, I've checked the settings and there's just no sound. Its chained tyres crunch against the soldered asphalt loudly. It finds its resting place in one of the many open spots. Through holes, so whoever is driving probably could have parked horizontally across several spots, and no one would be any the wiser. There was a brief moment of silence before the driver door swung open with a creak. With a not so graceful hop and stumble from the height of the vehicle, a woman braces herself against the car door. Who are we playing as? I should really get that step installed. Like certain other SUVs get, it's not just a clunk to the floor, but there's like a mini step. You have them on lorries and such, or any huge vehicle. Tractors. She huffed at her past self for putting off such a simple thing, but then shrugged off, smiling. Ah, I made it! Into the woods, and the woods with the trees with the no leaves. What am I making out? And the whole place to myself, too, from the looks of it. She beamed, noting the empty lot. The snow topped trees and the crisp air. She felt invigorated and ready for her adventure, her expedition. She rustled through her back seat, pulling out a hiking backpack that was nearly as large as she was. She had planned the whole day out, by the way. Hiking, lunch, then more hiking, small snack break, then hiking back to the start. It's a lovely thing to do, if I ever went to do that, by the way. It was going to be her first snow hike in years. Hiking has been a much-loved pastime for her these last few years. She grew up in the snow, and got her love of the outdoors from hiking the snowy trails of her hometown. The snow was like an old friend, and she missed out dearly. I'm not used to snow. I was when I was much younger because the world was cooler. But if you're anywhere like Canada, Siberia, I'm sure snow is just like the seasons going by. Literally, you notice it, and then it transpires by. Or if you're in Scotland as well, by the way. Like, they get plenty of snow up there. But for me and my part of the UK, snow is a non-existent thing. It's a myth at this point. Her hand hesitated for her flaming hot chips that lay half consumed in the passenger seat from her pit stop early in the morning. But she thought better of it and grabbed the beef jerky and a couple of hot cocoa packets just in case. I was about to say hot cocoa pockets, but you call those hot pockets just in case. You know, emergency supplies. Duh. She may have been a hot cocoa junkie, but that wasn't something she was ready to admit. She grabbed a couple more items to shove into the already over-capacity bag before slamming her car door shut and locking it with a beep of her keyring. She must only be able to travel at about 10% most if this was a fallout scenario. Her capacity is overflowing. And you know what I mean. She rubbed her hands together excitedly, then patted her chest. Under her sweater she wore a necklace her mother gave her on her birthday. On her birthday? A small heart-shaped pendant, gold, with a dainty chain. It remained polished from years of wear. Her mother had explained that it was hers, and her grandmother's, and her great-grandmother's, and then their great-great-aunts, and so on. Yeah, it goes throughout the family. It's been in this family for several generations now, and it was customary to pass it on to the daughter of the family. But here's a question. What if you don't have a daughter? we just keep going on like Henry VII, but the other way around until you get a daughter? Questions asked. Questions unable to have an answer to. The necklace had always served as a good luck charm to Bea. It's been with her since she got it, and it was going to stay with her long after. After double checking her necklace was on, she was ready. Ready for the off. Alrighty, let's go. Let's go into the woods. She started down the path, then stopped abruptly when a small panicked gasp. I locked my doors, right? Like locked them. She spun around and beeped her key ring again, making the car respond with a bleep and a blink of its lights. Whew, okay, I did it. Cool. Wait, one more time. Okay, maybe not. With her worries put at ease, she spins back around, ready for her adventure again. The snowy, wooded hiking trail was untouched, a perfect serene winter wonderland. A thin dusting of snow encrusted the leaves and blanketed the well-worn trail. This trail was very popular in the summer, but winter tended to clear the place out. Bea had never understood that. It was a beautiful place. The variety of evergreens and redwoods that populated this forest were beautiful in the snow. Albeit it was late in the winter, she was lucky there was snow during her trip. If you can call it lucky, that is, because driving in snow is a bit treacherous. But global warming or something, right? She shrugged at the thought. She was just happy she caught one of the last snows of the season. Oh, that's a pretty nice CG right there. She looks up at the foliage that allowed rays of light to peek through in bands and beams. If you can... Yeah, you can call it that, absolutely. The beams of light. The warmth of the sunlight felt just opposed, next to air cold enough to cloud her breath, And yet, despite the cold, it felt like she was walking through an oil painting. One of those oil paintings by the great masters of Impressionism and limited palettes. The monotonous white that covered everything, and yet hid a million different shades among its light, shadows and shapes. Everything blended together, but was easily differentiated as a stone or tree, vegetation or path. She tried taking pictures with her phone, but the images captured did the landscape little justice. This is what she gets for buying a cheap cell phone. Sometimes a cheap cell phone is all you can afford. Bea stretched out her arms, filled with giddy energy, and skipped down the trail, kicking snow and giggling, almost like a child going to the sweet shop. Oh my gosh, what is that face? She spotted a little snow hare that jumped away at her sudden loudness. Her eyes followed the hare until it disappeared into the white snow like a mirage. It is camouflaged. She pulled out one of her many snacks from her bag without taking it off, blindly feeling around the overstuffed bag before finding the one that felt right. The trail continues up a steep way, then plateaus at 8,000 feet. At this height, she can see out above the trees and can almost see the parking lot where she started. Just a speck in the distance now. Did we really climb all that way? Or maybe we was at a certain height first. Had she really hiked that far away? She really underestimated herself this time. Maybe she could go a bit further before heading back. She wondered wordlessly about what the end of the trail looks like. It looks like a hot cocoa stand. Would it lead all the way to the peak? She only really planned out the first 8-ish miles, and she was already going much quicker than anticipated. She shrugged. Who are we playing as, by the way? Who is this narration? That was something to consider when she reached her destination. Along the plateau was a carved-out section that was used as a rest area. The snow-covered area made it look like it was actually part of the land, and not a man-made rest stop. Bea snapped her sternum strap and hip straps open, then swung the enormous pack to her front. She undid the drawstring top and rummaged through to pull out her small tarp for her picnic with nature. She glanced around the rest stop and had a thought. If she wants to be in nature, she should be in nature, right? Not this man-made rest stop. But then she had a second thought. That's how people get lost, like in these horror movies. Don't say that when you're in the middle of the woods. She screwed her mouth and decided she would compromise with her anxiety. We'll just go we'll go just a little outside of the rest stop. A little. Don't go off the trail. She stepped over the small rock barricade, a mere 4-inch barrier, and felt a burst of giddy energy again. Just look at all the untouched snow, the trees with the small icicles hanging off their needles, and icy trails nest in the bark leading up the trunks of the redwoods. She felt her feet moving forward without thinking. She was completely what is that word? Enraptured. The powdered snow barely made a sound as it gave way under her boot. The light sparked and danced off the snow-covered landscape, almost like fairies mesmerizing her. Fireflies! She finally blinked, breaking the spell. How long had she walked? What was she thinking? Yeah, what were you thinking going off the trail? She turned around and found she could no longer see the rest stop. Gah! I knew this would happen. Why couldn't I just sit at the rest stop? She kicked the powdered snow. Okay. Breathe. She did a calming breathe motion, a breath motion with her arms. We'll just follow my footsteps back, right? It'll be fine. Little did you know, the pathway no longer exists. She about-faced and started to follow her steps back, stepping in each imprint, just to be sure. She walked, and walked, and walked, and walked. But that wasn't right. She couldn't have walked that far. Could she? Yeah, just keep going. She kept walking. What was this? Something is off. I've passed this tree before. We're in one of those infinite cycles. This stone looks the same. No way. Blah. That's the sound you make when you're sick. She lets out a gruely grunt of frustration. Bea plants her feet, then hugged her knees, shoving her face against them. There's no way she could be lost. She only went in a straight line, right? This is redonkulous. Not to mention the afternoon fog was rolling in and it was starting to get colder. The forecast didn't say anything about a storm. There are rare incursions called thunder snows. Just her luck, she guessed. Bea could feel dread creeping into her chest, squeezing her heart. She breathed and pushed it back down. There's no reason to panic, just get up and keep walking. It's all I can do, right? Keep walking. She hugged herself for warmth and continued to follow her footprints. The wind whipped up, making it harder to see, and freezing her nose and lips. It wasn't long before it became apparent that she was walking into a blizzard. She needed to move faster. Faster. And I'm sorry to say this, Bea, but you don't look that well dressed for this occasion. You look like you're going out for a summer camp vacation, not a winter camp vacation. Her steady pace became a jog, and then a blind sprint as she protects her eyes from the ice-laced winds that buffeted her. She ran. And ran. There is indeed sound. How long has she been running for? How long could she keep up this pace? Her breath became ragged. She knew she needed to keep going, but it was dangerous to keep pushing herself, especially in temperatures this low. She could already feel her airways getting irritated and inflamed. She needed a face covering for protection. Did she remember her neck gaiter? Did she bring her emergency flares? Her thoughts raced as the snow became deeper and deeper. Her sprint became a slog through calf-high snow. Excuse me. She could feel the snow getting into her boots, and the beginnings of the discomfort of wet socks. And then, something unseen hooked her boot, and she fell face first into the newly piled powder. She wanted to cry. This was supposed to be her day. Her escape from the real world for a day or two. It was supposed to be a stress-free adventure into the solitude of nature. She propped herself up, flew off her backpack, and collapsed on her back. She realized that the blizzard had stopped. The wind had died down, and it was just gently snowing now. Blah, I'm not going to say that word. She let out a long sigh of frustration, layered with an undertone of expletives. I've never seen that word before. Expletives, sorry. She closed her eyes and scrunched her face. Her face was red from the cold. Or was it anger? Or maybe a combination of both. First I got lost in the straight path in the forest, then a freak blizzard. Her words ring hollowly in the now silent serenity of a wooded snowscape. She suddenly became aware her hands were chilled to the bone, stiff and red, but no signs of frostnip yet. Bea cupped her hands and breathed into them, humming a little melody that sounded vaguely like a popular video game theme. Okay. She gasped as she thought of her necklace and patted her chest with a tad too much force. She felt it right where it should be. She sighed again, this time more calmly. Might as well make a snow angel. I'm sure you will see a snow angel at some point in the near future. Bea thought as she flung her arms back out to the snow. She lay there for a minute longer, wondering what her fate would be. Her tracks have been completely covered by the newly laid snow, and she has lost all orientation. She resigned herself to a long hike in one direction, to find her way back to civilization, and maybe even her car. Hopefully no more freak blizzards. But nature does not respond to your requests, for nature is a cruel mistress. Bea propped herself back up to her knees to rummage through her pack? Why do I keep thinking back? For her gloves, when something out of the corner of her vision caught her attention. A girl? Okay. She squinted and blinked, trying to focus on what she thought she saw. Forgetting about her search for her gloves for a moment, she swung her pack back on and rushed to get close to what she saw. With each step it becomes more apparent that what she saw was not a girl, but a woman, dressed in pale clothes, with pale hair and skin nearly as pale as snow, like it was covered from how do you pronounce that word, engaged in porcelain. She simmered along the snowscape, as if a part of it. Bea found herself hiding behind a tree, unsure of herself. What was she seeing? What was she doing out here? Were they lost like she was? Is this her... What do you mean is this... Oh, I see, is this her property? She was beautiful. Breathtakingly so. But her icy blue eyes seemed sad, resigned. Bea could almost see the air sparkling around her. Her movements seemed to move the snow. Or rather, was that her clothing? It must just be a trick of the eye, right? Bea hesitated only a moment longer before approaching the strange woman. With careful steps she walked closer to her, calling out. Hello there, Slippery. Do you happen to live here? I seem to have got myself lost and... Oh my, do you need a jacket? You must be freezing. Here, please take... Oh hi. Bea had another misstep and plummeted to where the woman stood. Embarrassed and rubbing her hip, Bea stood up quickly and offered her a windbreaker to the woman, with an outstretched arm. The icy figure stared down at Bea. She was much taller than Bea realized, and towered over her with a glowing stare. There was a long moment of silence before Bea made a small movement with the jacket, saying she insisted. The woman still did not make a move to take it. Bea slowly lowered her arm. Or, if you're worried that it's not clean, I have a tarp blanket that's sealed in my bag. Bea smiled and motioned to her pack. I'm also of coca. If we find a place to make it and boil some, water? Look, there's snow around you, okay? It is literally just water that's frozen. Bea slowly remembered that they're in the middle of nowhere and should not bring her camping supplies. Very good of you, just in case you were put into one of these kind of scenarios where you're unable to return to your car at that point in time. It would be nice to actually bring something. I mean, I did, but what good are they in the car? You think that you wasn't going to go camping? She silently curses her over-preparedness and simultaneous under-preparedness. Yes, you have it. But wait, you don't have it at the same time. How did I know I'd get turned around in and get lost on a straightforward trail in a forest, then encounter a freak blizzard, and then encounter a similarly lost person in the forest? She rubs her forehead with a fist, caught up in her own thoughts again, not realizing the woman had reached an arm out to her. Huh? Yes, of course. Bea hands her jacket over to the woman, who drapes it over her shoulders with a coy smile. Ah, Bea finds her face heating up. Okie dokie. What? She says it so quietly, she barely hears it herself, but covers her mouth anyways to prevent anything from spilling out. She's gorgeous. The silent admission was enough to send a giddy flutter through her heart. Ah. Woman gives Bea a nod and then finally speaks. Thank you. Her voice was like ice cubes cleaning a glass, on a thin sheet of ice spluttering quietly. It sent a chill down Bea's spine. You're welcome? Bea smiled timidly, before the cold reminded her yet again they were stranded. So, do you, live around here? The woman smiled again, but it was more of an off-centered smirk, like a crooked smile. Yes, you could say that. Oh, that's wonderful. Would it be okay if I went to your house and used your phone? Bea reached out and grabbed her hand, walking in the direction they were facing. Oh, I do not have a house. Bea stopped to absorb what she said. So you're lost just like me? No. The woman seems confused, which made Bea even more confused. Do you know where we are then? Could you lead me back to the trail, or better yet, the parking lot? Well, the woman thought, then looked around confused. I never really thought of where here is. Her thin voice trailed off, so to her this forest is just one huge place. A place so immaculate, so huge, that it is the world to her. Bea was starting to become genuinely worried. She could feel her fear start to creep in, but she pushed it down with a deep breath. Okay, well, let's just choose a direction and walk. Does that sound good? The woman still looks confused, but the warmth of Bea's hand in hers felt nice. She nodded and allowed Bea to lead her in an arbitrary direction. Well then, we got ourselves an adventure. They walked for a while in silence, with only the sound of the snow crunching beneath their feet to fill the void. I was about to say, you can't walk in total silence, because this can never be a sneak mission when it comes to the snow. Because the snow always makes that crunching sound. Bea glanced back occasionally to make sure she was okay, and saw she was staring unwaveringly directly at her. Okay. Bea quickly looked back ahead. Her cheeks flushed. Was there something on her face? Why was she staring at her with such intensity? So, her voice was much louder than she anticipated. She cleared her throat and then started over, much more quietly. So, what's your name? Bea chanced a quick glance back with a smile. The woman was still staring intently at Bea, but then blinked at a question. She thought for a moment, then quietly said, Camilla. Camilla? Like the flower? Like a season. Camilla nodded, just like the flower. I'm Beatrix, but you can just call me Bea. Bea turned back, again, and smiled. All my friends call me Bea. Friends? Camilla just stared, nodding slightly in acknowledgement. There was another silent moment before Bea spoke again. Hey Camilla, have you ever had hot chocolate? Camilla shook her head. No. Bea was shocked. She spun around and threw up her hands, letting go of Camilla's. What? Oh man, it's the greatest thing ever. It's sweet and filling and perfect for a cold day. Wait, coca? Have you heard of coca? Camilla shook her head again, though this time she looked slightly amused. Bea was passionate about her hot chocolate and coca. She was holding her beanie, still shocked. Okay, once we're out of here, we need to fix it, okay? Yeah, we need to fix her problem. How could you not like coca? I know a good place in the city. I bet she doesn't know what a city is. Bea had turned back around, still holding her head, like she couldn't shake that someone had never had this gloriousness in a cup before. I bet she doesn't even know what a cup is. And this place uses all 3 types of chocolate. Can you believe that? White, milk, and dark. It has such a balanced recipe that they top it off with a piece of ruby chocolate and the starter, and nah, so good. Bea trailed off about her favourite recipe as she shrugged on leaving Camilla to ponder the warmth left on her hand. She raised it to her cheek. It was a sensation she wasn't much familiar with. It made her happy. Camilla could feel the edges of her mouth turn upward into a smile. Bea glanced back when Camilla doesn't answer one of her various follow-up questions, and realized Camilla wasn't directly behind her. Bea looked around wildly before finding Camilla exactly where she was last standing. Carefully, Bea jogged back to Camilla. Are you okay? Are you tired? We can rest if you need to. Bea put a hand on Camilla's forearm gingerly, and was shocked to find her so cold, like ice. Oh, we need to get you indoors. No wonder you're not moving so well. Bea looks around the barren forest wildly. I never heard of wilding. This isn't good. When hypothermia sets in like this, we need a... God, I wish there was some place we could make coca. Camilla stared down blankly at the small panicking Bea. The wind began to whip up again. Oh no, not another freak blizzard, please. As if to scorn Bea's pleas, the wind became stronger, driving them in a direction different as before. Camilla reached out and grabbed Bea's hands. Bea held it tightly as she shielded her eyes with her free hand. They walked blindly for what felt like ages before stumbling into a clearing. The blizzard was picking up even stronger now, with the winds howled through the trees. Bea slips, but is caught by Camilla. Her hand was surprisingly steady. Not a huge amount of movement with the characters. Bea went to thank her, but spotted something in the distance. No way! It's a house! Is that a cabin? More specifically, it's a cabin. Bea couldn't believe her luck today. Shelter! Her mix of fortune and misfortune was enough to make her head spin. But she didn't have time to explain to Camilla, or contemplate her cosmic karma. She needed to get to that structure she could barely make out on the other side of the clearing. Pulling Camilla along, Bea fought her way through the snow and up the steps of the cabin door. Oh dearie me. Exhaustion kicking in. Bea pulled the door open. Luckily it was unlocked, and motioned Camilla in. Then, using her entire weight to pull the door closed against the blizzard wind, Bea fell backwards onto the wooden floor, breathing hard in the small cabin air. Everything was still and quiet, except for wind whistling through the cracks in the door. Oh dearie me. Bea lies on her back, taking in everything that had happened today. She had a day like today on her bucket list, hiking this mountain trail and staying in a snow-crest cabin with a beautiful woman, that is. Not getting lost in the woods and being trapped in a snowed-in cabin in the woods. Bea turned her attention back to the present and looked up at Camilla. A mirthful smile played on Bea's lips. Oh hey, fancy meeting you here. Camilla stares at Bea and blinks slowly. We came in together. Oh, Bea looks away embarrassed and hurriedly gets up. Never mind. Let's see what's in here. Bea Bea busies herself with unpacking her rucksack and going through the cupboards. Camilla looks around the room, then after removing her coat, sits at one of the wooden chairs at a small table. It's a small cabin, with just enough space to move around each piece of furniture. There's a small sofa, a square table just large enough for two, and two chairs. There was also a wood fire, pot-belly stove, and a couple of freestanding hutches with cupboards that had a strangely stocked supply of plates and mugs. Bea pulled out the last of her supplies and took account of how long they could get by on what she had packed. She had a good amount of snacks, but what really worried her was how long they could last on the water she had. She canvassed the cabin and found a small sink with running water that connected to a very small bathroom. Bea ran the water, and luckily it hadn't frozen. A big smile split her serious expression in two. Eureka! Where's that? No, it's just an expression. No, what? It's just a phrase. I mean, we have running water. That's good. Bea's big smile made Camilla smile a little. So you know what that means? We will not die of dehydration. No, I mean, yes. I mean, it means I can make you cocoa. This loveliness of cocoa. Bea almost skipped to her bag. She was still shivering from the cold and the fact her clothes were very nearly soaked through. So she couldn't really skip. First things first, though. Fire! Camilla looked through the contents of Bea's pack as Bea gathered the wood and attempted to start a fire. The physical exertion from starting the fire was good, as it warmed up Bea's freezing body. She didn't need to worry so much about Camilla's hypothermia if she succumbed to it first. As Bea works to start a fire in the small wood-burning stove, she can't help but feel like she's been watched, which makes sense really. There's another person here with nothing better to do than to watch her. But still, the feeling of Camilla's stare runs a shiver up and down her spine. She worked the little embers she got and nursed it until it became a flame. She built a small tent of wood around it, and warmed her hands until it became self-sufficient enough so she can close the stove door. She grabbed the kettle and put some water on to boil, then setting the free chair across from Camilla. Bea felt so much colder sitting away from the stove. She almost regretted moving away from it, but also didn't want Camilla to feel lonely? Bea couldn't really think anymore. Her thoughts were muddled between survival adrenaline and trying to seem composed in front of Camilla. Not that she was trying to impress her, but more to help her feel safe. Camilla, however, didn't seem at all fazed. She looked comfortable, despite still being near freezing temperatures within the cabin. Bea blinked slowly. Camilla almost felt like a vision. She simmered and sparkled, and phased in and out of focus with the motes of dust that floated in the cabin air. Bea rubbed her eyes. Damn, she was tired. She tried to perk herself up by trying out some conversation. Hey, Camilla. Her words came out slowly. My words did not. Her mouth felt like cotton, and swallowing was hard. Bea cleared her throat and tried again. Camilla? Are you alright? Bea's attention snaps back into focus. Her head had lured forward. She rubs her face, throws off her jacket, and gets up to check the water and fire. The water was warm, but fire was still going. Fierce fire. She wasn't out for more than a minute. Bea continues to watch the water as the heat warms her again frigid body. Camilla? Yeah? I'm excited to make this cocoa for you. Camilla felt something in her stomach move or flutter. She wasn't sure what to call this feeling. I am intrigued to try it. Bea felt herself smile. She felt a little goofy or loopy. She was pretty sure half of this was a hallucination, but hey, if she was hallucinating, might as well be making cocoa. She finally started seeing bubbles form at the bottom of the kettle and shuffled over to the nearest hutch to pull out some mugs. She emptied her cocoa packet into each, then poured in the freshly boiled water. She gingerly walked the piping hot cocoa over to the table and slid one mug over to Camilla, who looked intrigued. Ah. Bea cupped her mug and let the heat radiate up her arms. Camilla hesitantly reached towards the mug, then gasped, pulling her hand back quickly. Ah, I'm sorry, it's very hot. Please let it cool a little. A little. Your hands must be freezing, so it'll definitely hurt as they warm up again. Camilla nodded and watched Bea as she blew on her coca. Camilla leaned over her mug and blew softly, mimicking Bea with her own drink. She reached out again and touched the mug much more comfortably this time. Bea watched with intense interest as Camilla held the mug, then took a sip. Was she going to like it? Bea blew on her cocoa again and took a sip, closing her eyes to cherish the comforting warmth and flavour. Bea opened her eyes again to find that Camilla had emptied her mug. Bea leaned over to make sure, but yeah, Camilla had already drank the whole mug full. How... It was good. The flavour, very, flavourful. Bea snorted and had to put her cup down. She erupted with giggles as Camilla stared on. I'm sorry. Just, I never had that someone's respond that way. Same for people listening to me right now. Never really hear of this kind of response, but there we go. Bea couldn't hold herself together. She laughed until she had stitches and then tried to calm herself with a couple deep breaths. Whoa! Whew. Oh my, I think I needed that laugh. Bea looked up at Camilla with a big smile again. I'm very happy you enjoyed it. Camilla smiled. She was also happy she enjoyed it. The heat the drink left reminded her of Bea's warm hand in hers. Thank you for sharing. Camilla's smile sent Bea's heart and stomach to flutter. Her cheeks felt warm again. No problem. Bea stood up abruptly to collect the mugs and fed to the fire, but Camilla grabbed her hand. The warmth from the cocoa just lingered still in Bea's hand, while Camilla's hands were already cold. She longed for warmth in her own again. Are you okay? Camilla didn't know what to say. It was not in her nature to talk unless she had something to say. So what was she trying to say? She paused, searching for the reason. Do you have more coke? What? I mean, we don't have an infinite amount, so it's not like we can just keep going and going and going with this sort of thing. Bea smiled. Yeah, only one more packet though. Would you like it? No problem then. Bea smirked and shimmied back over to the stove with the mugs. Within minutes, Bea had made the new mug of cocoa and Camilla drank it while Bea snacked on a trial mix bar. I'm so glad you like the cocoa. I don't know why I keep yawning. Well, before the recording I never was yawning. But for some odd reason I'm yawning every other minute. Camilla could feel the embarrassment of asking for another cut starting to creep in. She felt greedy. I'm sorry for drinking your last cocoa. Oh, it's okay. I get to have cocoa all the time. It's only fair I share my goodies with someone who's never had it. I suppose. Camilla didn't like this feeling. It didn't sit well with her. Hey, I promise, okay? Bea smiled at Camilla and held out a pinky. Okay, but what's this gesture? Ah, it's for a pinky promise. Pinky? Promise? Yep, the strongest promise in all the world. It means I cannot break my promise. And I pinky promise to you that give you my last cocoa was because I wanted you to have it. Okay? Camilla nodded and held out her pinky, too, mirroring Bea. Bea then leaned forward, hooking Camilla's pinky in hers. Pinky swear, the promise has been sealed. Camilla's eyes seemed to sparkle. Pinky swear, the promise has been sealed. Camilla repeated it quietly. Bea giggled softly as she took away the mug and trash. Bea was feeling really sleepy again, but at least dry this time. The pot-bellied stove was heating up the cabin nicely, and she was finally able to shed her layers comfortably. We should figure out sleeping arrangements. Bea's voice trailed off as she realized the sofa was quite small. Sleeping? Are you tired? No. Camilla said it slowly. It was the truth, and Bea seemed quite tired despite her upbeat attitude. Well, are you sure? I don't want you to feel obliged. Oh, sorry, obligated. Bea had straightened up from checking on the fire and suddenly felt very woozy. She stumbled back and gripped the back of the sofa. Camilla could feel her feet move before she knew what she was doing. She held Bea up, keeping her from falling over. Camilla led her to the sofa and reluctantly let go of her. Sleep? Now? Camilla's words sounded like questions to Bea than actual commands. But Bea gave in to her fatigue. Bea could feel the heat from the stove emanating. She was comfortable and fell asleep as soon as her body hit the sofa. Camilla stood there for a moment before beginning to pace. Time felt endless. The cabin seemed to move around her. It was like she glided through space, allowing it to pass beneath her. She lifted Bea's coat off the back of a chair and held it to her chest. It must be real. This jacket is real after all. Camilla stared at Bea's body on the sofa. Limp, warm, defenseless. Camilla could feel her longing to feel Bea's skin beneath her fingers again. What do you mean again? Oh, I see, because of earlier. To hold her hand to her cheek. She held the jacket to her face and... oh gosh, okay. The smell of the woods, of the snow that had dampened in, of the artificial fabrics it was made of the manufactured snacks it was surrounded by, of the organic smell of beer that just barely lingered. Camilla sat back down in the chair at the table and laid her head in her arms, with the jacket as a cushion. She slowly blinked, her eyes still trained on Bea. What is so interesting about her? Why is her warmth so alluring? Camilla closed her eyes, letting her questions consume her. Bea's heart was beating fast. She could barely breathe. How far did she have to run to shake this phantom? She heaved, then continued charging ahead double time, quickly glancing backwards. The two glowing eyes that had been slowly following her every move continued to gain on her despite her quickened pace. Slowly, inevitably, they encroached on the ground she had put between them. Where are we right now, in her dreams? She fell to her trembling knees, unable to force him to go any further. And the eyes, they keep coming closer and closer. Bea awoke the next morning to an unfamiliar ceiling, atop an unfamiliar and lumpy sofa. Where in the world? She blinked slowly, the image of the red eye, glowing eyes ever following, still haunting her vision. Then the soreness in her neck and legs pushed the memories to the surface. The hike, blizzard, cabin, Coco, the beautiful woman who shared all those with her. Camilla's blushed lips and dazzling eyes teased her imagination. Her pale blonde hair, like etched marble, framed her face perfectly. The cool touch of her hand in hers. It definitely wasn't all a dream. With the image of Camilla firmly in her mind's eye, Bea bulks upright and looks around until she spots a woman standing barefoot in front of a stove. Without caring for the harsh predicament she found herself, she swiftly said a quick thank you to whatever entity has led her to this point. She still couldn't decide if she was the luckiest person ever or mostly unlucky. Most unlucky. Wait, what am I saying? We're trapped here. She slowly and quietly sat up, wanted to observe Camilla for a few more moments. It was then that she realized that Camilla appeared tense. Her shoulders were set in such a way as to express a great deal of confusion and frustration. Come on, you. Do this thing one for me. Just do this one thing for me. You have no qualms about setting my forest ablaze, but you won't light just this small bit of wood, so I can try to... what's it called again? Cook? Why do you think we're setting a forest ablaze? That part doesn't make sense. Who are you talking to? Camilla spun around with a start. Just not a person, just myself. A small blush crept across Camilla's face as she tried desperately to appear as though everything has been going exactly according to plan. Of course, it hadn't been. She knows that. Bea probably knows too. Do you need help with that? That would be most kind. Camilla's face turns even redder as she accepted Bea's existence. Existence. My bad. Bea rolled herself off the sofa with no semblance of grace or dexterity. She then bounced up off the floor and was to Camilla's side in less than a few seconds. Oh, I see. You're trying to relight the stove. I can do that for you. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. As Bea gets work setting the wood inside the stove, just so, Camilla couldn't help but be entranced. As Camilla watched, Bea's hands moved with precision and care. Within a few moments, she had a small fire lit. She tended to the fire with the hands of one who both loves the warmth and respects the dangers of the flame. Camilla was so lost in thought she didn't notice herself reaching out timidly. As Bea's hands left the stove, Camilla's fingers brushed against Bea's delicately. Bea jumped, startled by the sudden contact. Oh, be careful, if you get too close you'll get burned. Look. Bea held up the back of her hand to Camilla, and she could see that there were hairs that had been singed when the flame had turned suddenly. Camilla took the hand and looked closely, savouring once again the warmth of Bea's hands. She drew Bea's hand close to her cheek, as if to wish for harm that had befallen the girl. I wish away, my bad. She opened her eyes and saw Bea look back at her with a blush and just a touch of confusion. Suddenly the moment was over and Camilla let Bea's hand go, self-conscious of her actions. What am I doing? She must think. Camilla's thoughts trailed off as she realized that Bea was talking to her. So anyway, are you hungry? I think I saw some trail bars and dried fruits in my pack. If that's not what you want, perhaps there's, Bea searched the tiny cabin for something other than her dry trail mix bars and dried fruit and her dry granola bars. I wish there was something else to eat. She pouts. Then suddenly something catches her eyes. Was it a glare from a reflection? A trick of the eye. Bea spins around and comes back to facing Camilla. What are you? Are you okay? Bea frowns her brow, trying to understand something beyond her capacity. Bea? Camilla reached out a hand hesitantly, and Bea's eyes refocus. Sorry, what was I saying? Oh right, food. Then something draws her gaze to a wicker basket in the hutch behind Camilla. Bea steps forward and lowers Camilla's hand with both of hers. No, that wasn't... Look, Bea says it softly. With a single breath, wonder filled with a single syllable. Camilla turns towards the hutch and blinks. Oh, how did that get here? There. Camilla played with a puzzled expression. Bea shot a glance between Camilla and the basket, then decided to not question the unrivaled luck. Her stomach rumbles and cramps remind her yet again of the unprecedented amount of calories she burned yesterday. Bea claps her hands. Well, anyhow, thank you, whoever was here before us for the food. Pancakes and apples? Bea moved the wicker basket to the table to unpack it, and he laid out the supplies. I was about to surprise. She put a hand to her chin thoughtfully. There are eggs, apples, and bread. An idea spun into her mind as she started to rummage through the other hutches and cabinets looking for other items. She returned to the table with flour, sugar, spices, remarkably well-preserved items, given this place seemed abandoned. It was almost like this place was made for us. The thought that this could actually be someone's home crossed her mind briefly, but so did the reminder that none of these supplies were here yesterday. Camilla? Camilla sat at the table and curiously watched Bea unloaded ingredients to start an assembly line of mixing and whisking and melting and cooking. With minimal mess, Bea had whipped up scrambled eggs, toast, and pancakes for them to eat. Bea slid the plate stacked high with food onto the table and, almost too excited, slammed down with two mugs of cocoa, but I thought they ran out. I don't know how I missed this. There were several bags of cocoa in the hutch with the mugs. Miraculous. No? Miraculous. Oh, indeed. Camilla has sus written all over her. She knows what she deployed. A mischievous grin played on Bea's lips as she exchanged looks with Camilla, who played meek. Was it luck? Luck? Magic? Surrender... I'm not going to try and pronounce that word. Serendipitous alignments. Did Camilla somehow go out into the storm and get these supplies? Or did she magically summon them? Bea wasn't sure, but the type of questions would have to be for later. Now was about survival, and especially now was about eating this food that smelled so good. Bea took a couple timid bites. Somehow the eggs tasted like the most delicious eggs she'd have ever, and the pancakes, even though she was missing some supplies, turned out perfect. And the cocoa was perfect! Wow, I have never eaten something like this before. Do you like it? Absolutely. Nobody to cook for her. Nobody to cook for poor Camilla. I was supposed to say Bea, but she was the one that cooked it. Camilla blew lightly on her steaming plate of food, then ate slowly as she listened to Bea talk. This is just something simple. Hope it tastes good. Well, I wonder if it's just because I'm starved, but it all came out amazing. You mean starving? Is it good? Bea's question had caught Camilla with her mouth full, so she nodded enthusiastically. At least she has manners when it comes to eating food and not speaking out loud. Look at me now, Mom. Bea puffed up her chest proudly, hoping her thoughts can be channeled to her mother, 1,000 miles away. You see, my mum is an amazing chef and baker. She used to run her own bakery for a while, until she had me, but she never lost her passion for cooking and baking. She was the first person to introduce me to cocoa. Mum must be someone you really look up to. I mean, yes? Something tells me that Camilla does not have a mum, or a dad, or any family for that matter. She is a deity of sorts. She did raise me. She also taught me to appreciate nature, which I think is what led me to my love of hiking and the outdoors. Bea's eyes sparkled as she talked about her passions. Camilla quietly nodded and urged on the one-sided conversation throughout their meal. Was Mum the one who gave you that as well? Camilla had spotted the golden heart-shaped necklace Bea wore. It glanced in the subtle light. Bea patted her chest to find it and fiddle with it. Oh. Oh yes. I love it. It's been in our family for a long time. It's my favourite necklace. I can't remember the last time I took it off. Bea tucked her necklace back into her shirt to keep it safe. Family? Camilla wondered wordlessly. It wasn't until Bea had started to clean up that she realised she had dominated the majority of the late morning's, now late afternoon's topics. Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't yet you talk. I tend to go on and on. Bea laughs nervously. The last thing she wanted was to make it seem like she only cared about herself. Please, what are you passionate about? I do not... Come on, Camilla. Surely you have some passion, okay? Even if it's just passion for Bea. If you know what I mean. Anyways, let's move on. Bea paused midway to the sink and spun around. That's not right. I mean, there must be something you enjoy doing, no? Camilla took a moment to think, to seriously consider if there was anything in her relatively short life that she has enjoyed. Oh, I enjoy listening to you talk. A good listener. She smiled that She smiled that small reserved smile, and Bea felt her face become red hot. There was a long moment of silence as Bea tried to recover her words. Bea, is there not something I can enjoy? No, you can enjoy that. I love the animation for that, about how she spun around. Bea stiffly spun back around and put the dishes in the sink to rinse. She could hear her nervous heartbeat in her ears. It was like one of those animations that you put in a PowerPoint presentation, the one that fades in and out. She needed to calm down. Her knees had become jelly just hearing Camilla say those words. Her stomach was doing somersaults. Bea took a couple measured breaths and tried to casually saunter back over to the table. Camilla watched Bea's awkward strut and couldn't help but giggle ever so slightly. Bea? Yeah? Can we talk just a little more? Yeah. Bea slides back into her chair at the table, as gracefully as her wobbly knees would allow. She shifts in her seat trying to get comfortable again. The cool blue light that lit the cabin through the single window warmed as the sun began to tilt into the afternoon hours. We can talk about you for a bit. Tell me about yourself. I do not enjoy talking of myself. I would much prefer you talk. Camilla, come on! Bea wiggled in her chair again. I want to know more about you. Bea leans over the table and lightly touches Camilla's hand. Where are you from? Do you have a middle name? Or last name for that? I want to... Please, Bea. Tell me about snow. Okay. Snow? You said you love snow, right? I do. It's one of my favourite things in the world. I have a healthy respect for it, for its fierceness and its chill, the ruthlessness that it can have. But I also love how it sparkles after a fresh powder blankets everything. I love the sound of the crunch when I walk in it. I love that it's weather you can play with and build things out of. That is an interesting aspect about snow, and something that I really never considered before, actually. You know, snow being this harsh thing that has also good aspects about it, like kids playing in the snow and stuff like that. But it's like with fire and water. Water can drown a person. Fire can engulf someone in flames. But we need heat and we need water to survive. It's like with anything in moderation. It's a balance. I'm trailing off here. Camilla slowly interlaces her fingers in Bea's as she talks. When it snows, the landscape completely changes, and new animals come and go. The snow is nature's paint. If it's its chisel, and the land we inhabit is its humble canvas. Bea's eyes wandered to the snow-packed window, and then back to Camilla's icy blue eyes. The snow is like your eyes, full of wonder and beauty. It was Camilla's turn to stiffen. A blush creeps into her cheeks and she shifts in her chair, letting go of Bea's hand. Bea realizes the words she thought were only in her head were in fact said out loud, and her blush deepens. Embarrassment grips her stomach as she stands suddenly. The wood is low. Bea paces the tiny cabin, searches for some extra wood, and then heads to the front door. Bea, no, the blizzard is dangerous still. I'll be fine. She attempts to open the door, but it's like the door is sealed shut. She shoves it with all her weight and strength, and it barely budges an inch. Snow was packed heavily against the door, and the wind howled to be let in. Bea, realizing her mistake, gripped the door handle and pulled it shut again. Sliding down to the ground, she cursed the blizzard. Just that quick second of the door being open was enough to suck what felt like all the warm air from the cabin interior. Bea shivered and popped back up to her feet. She continued to pace. There had to be something to do with, we need supplies, we need food. Bea's pacing began to gradually increase in speed, raising her hands as she paced. Anything to keep her hands busy. We need heat. We need a plan. The strange wicker basket caught her eye, filling her head with questions again. She points an accusing finger at the basket. And this? How did this even get here? Where the hell are we? Maybe you missed. Seriously, this cabin gives me the creeps. Why couldn't I just listen to my own logic? Why couldn't I just set up a picnic area like a normal person? Ugh. A helpless, ragged groan escapes her throat. In a felt of hopelessness, she tosses the blanket to the floor, as if it was a representation of all her misfortune. We need to get out of here, she whispered hoarsely as she sank to the ground. Sobs reeked her shoulders. She began to softly cry. She felt like a petulant child, trapped, useless, unhelpful, and pitiful. This wasn't supposed to be how her vacation went. This wasn't supposed to be how any of this went. And as cool and unbothered and prepared as she wanted to be, she wasn't. She was scared. Camilla kneels softly at her side and takes Bea's hand in hers. She clasps her hand tightly, reassuringly. You can leave this cabin as soon as it's safe. For now, however, we have everything we need. Are you sure, Camilla? Without warning, she lets go and takes Bea's pinky in hers. Pinky promise? Oh wow. Bea looks up into Camilla's eyes. Her usually cold blue eyes seem to fill Bea with warmth. Tears still streaming down her cheeks, Bea smirks and sniffles. The promise has been sealed? Ah, Camilla smiles softly back and nods. The promise has been sealed. Again. Now, how about some tea? There's tea? I think I saw some in the cupboard. Camilla takes Bea's hand more firmly again and helps her to her feet. Okay. These things just keep magically appearing. Together, Camilla and Bea sat on the small sofa and sipped the mystery tea they found in the cupboard. Bea holds her mug close and blows on the hot tea before taking a hesitant sip. The tea had a faint floral smell and smooth tannins. The flavour was somewhere between jasmine and camellia. She took a bigger sip. The tea was comforting for a brief moment. She was back at her tiny city apartment wrapped in a blanket, decomposing after work. I feel like the blizzard was also made by Camilla, not just the items that keep appearing in the cabin. Bea opened her eyes again, allowing herself a quick moment of hope that this was all just a bad dream, but found the same old cabin. Is the tea good? Yeah, she knows about the tea. Bea jumped a little at the sound of Camilla's voice. She was so caught up in her thoughts she had completely forgotten about Camilla sat next to her. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I startle you? If you wish not to talk, I'll be silent. No, I was just thinking. The tea is really good. Camilla felt her pride swell and she smiled triumphantly inwardly. Bea sipped her tea again. Do you know what kind of tea this is? My own blend. You have good taste. Bea couldn't think clearly, or perhaps she had just heard wrong. The contradiction of his cabin being abandoned, yet Camilla also having intimate knowledge of his tea was strangely not computing with Bea. Her vision began to come and go. She could feel her consciousness slipping. She could feel her head lowered to her side and rest on Camilla's shoulder. Bea felt Camilla jump a little, but her cool shoulder was sobbing to Bea's suddenly hot face. Are you okay? Concern crossed Camilla's face. I'll add wood to the fire? She leaned forward to get up, but Bea placed a hand on her arm. Hey, could we stay like this for just a little while? Camilla wordlessly nodded and settled back into her seat next to Bea. She could feel Bea's heat slowly creep into her body. This is the closest she's ever felt to being hot. It was not long before Bea's soft breathing evened out. Camilla carefully moved Bea's mug to the floor before moving Bea's head from her shoulder to the couch cushion and getting up. Wow. Okay. She walked briskly to the coldest corner in the cabin and sat down, hugging her legs. Silence overtook the room. The crackling of fire had quieted. Even the howling wind was no more. The light of the moon streamed into the room and illuminated Bea's sleeping body perfectly. The pure silence was deafening. Camilla was alone with her thoughts again. She dug her nails into her arms and tried to steady her breath, but it wasn't enough. She had cooled herself off, but it wasn't enough to erase her feelings. The heat she felt in her chest made her breathe ragged. Her feet moved her, pacing. She sits next to the dying embers, feeding it another log, hoping that the heat felt by the fire was enough to satiate her longing. But it was a futile effort, and she knew it. She knew what she craved, the warmth, the gentle heat of another body, of beer. But she also loathed it. As much as she wanted it, she also wanted to consume it, destroy it, smother it. What is going on right now with our character? Beer was like sunshine, something she's always naturally craved and viscerally feared. And now that Camilla's experienced Beer's sunlight, she's been drawn in. She craves it every time she sees her. Every moment near Beer, she wants to touch her. The soft fingertips that trace her body, and the heat trails left on her skin like paint. A beautiful portrait of what spring could be like. How badly she wanted to see that spring. Whoa, but she will never see spring. Instead, she will be stuck here, trapped between worlds, lost among a land that is both hers and not. She does not exist, but neither does she cease to be, and all the same time, instinctively aware of the happiness of the world, while not being present to experience them. Is this what sleep feels like? How many winters has it been now? She could feel herself moving again. Where is she going? She was barely still aware she was here. Her days were already in the negative. She became aware of Beer's figure in her vision again. She stood over her body. Her shadow, cast by the moonlight, passed over Beer's face. What the hell is now going on here? She's some sort of winter vampire? I don't even know what that is. She felt her body kneel as her hands reached out. Her instincts were screaming, consume the warmth. But her heart wanted to stop. It wasn't what she wanted. Camilla reached out her hands, placing one on Beer's shoulders and the other on her forehead. Please. Her heart begged her instincts. Please don't. Camilla reached out her hands, placing one on Beer's shoulders and the other on her forehead. The heat surged back into her fingertips. Her mind was drunk with pleasure. She leaned forward, her fangs poised. Beer turned, groggily smiling through bleary eyes. How forward? Oh. Beer reached out with a limp hand and pulled Camilla in close. I thought you'd never ask. Camilla closed her eyes. Beer's hot breath on her face made her chest feel tight. What was this feeling? Their lips touched softly and lingered for a moment. Ah. Beer began to pull back hesitantly, but Camilla kissed her again. Their lips meet again, but with more urgency. Camilla let Beer lead as she bit her lip and they parted for her. Beer's hands interlaced hers and pulled her gently. Camilla froze. She pulled away and retreated from Beer, covering her mouth. I'm sorry. Was that too much? Beer rubbed her eyes as she sat up. Camilla? Camilla tried to turn away from her, but it was already too late. In the dim light of the moon, Beer could see her glowing red eyes and fangs glistening. Camilla, what? I wish you not see this version of me. Camilla, wait, I must go. Oh my. Camilla leans forward to get her feet underneath her, and Beer catches her hand. Camilla's downcast face could not meet Beer's pleading eyes. Camilla pulls on her arm gently, but Beer's grip wouldn't give. Let me go. It's already too late. Please, talk to me. I'm a monster. I've known this for a long time. I don't see you as one. Camilla let her arm go limp. Her face still turned away. Her emotions pulled her to run, but also embraced Bia's open invitation. Camilla, just talk to me about who you are. Camilla, I could tell you were different from the beginning. I felt it. I could just barely puzzle out and make excuses for certain actions. So you knew and felt it, but stayed anyways. Bia reached out hesitantly and softly turned Camilla's face up to meet her gaze. Crystalline tears edged her eyes. They sparkled like new fallen snow, but she was smiling. Bia's heart jumped and tears stung her eyes. Camilla's hand reached up and brushed away a tear on Bia's cheek. Thank you. Bia, sniffling, could only smile and nod, then pulls Camilla back towards the couch. They sat down, holding hands and exchanging explanations of Bia's skepticism. It wasn't long before Bia was back to sleep, her head on Camilla's lap while Camilla ran her hands through Bia's hair. Ah, that's a lovely tale. The sound of birds chirping woke up Bia. Warm beams of sunlight bathed her in its glow. She opened her eyes, and for a brief, panicked moment, she could not find Camilla. Bia popped up from the couch and found Camilla leaning against the sink looking her direction. Morning. She said it so quietly. Bia returned the greeting and asked if she had slept. I do not. You mean you did not? Bia blinked, and Camilla attempted a small chuckle, which in turn made Bia laugh. The tension of her slowly building broke, and Bia smiled. What do you have for us today? She figured it out now. Camilla softly glided over to Bia, pecked her on the cheek, then twirled over to the hutch where the wicker basket was before. We have similar items to yesterday, but no apples, nectarines. She skips back over to Bia and gives her another peck on the cheek. Are these pecks necessary? Absolutely. Her cheek was much warmer this time. Camilla places the items on the table, then notices Bia smiling. Camilla suddenly feels very self-conscious. You're awfully cute when you're happy. Bia smiled and blushed even deeper. Again, those loose lips of hers letting thoughts tumble out right out, but the embarrassment was worth it for Camilla's smile. Camilla played with a lock of her hair as she laid the ingredients out of on the table. You're going to love the city. There's so much to see. Camilla froze, but Bia continued on dreamingly. The lights sparkle like the stars, and the cocoa is magnificent. Not to mention my mom's baked treats will have you dancing like this all the time. And now that the blizzard has stopped, we can go... Bia finally stumbled back to reality. Did I say something wrong? No. Are you okay? Bia touched Camilla's hand gently and gave it a squeeze. Let's get breakfast going. Bia gathered up a couple of items from the table, but Camilla stopped her. I am so sorry, Bia. Sorry for what? I cannot leave here. Bia's mind raced, running through question after question. What do you mean? I cannot leave this place, this domain, this forest, ever. Surely there's a way... Ever. Please, let us get some food, then we can talk. Together with mild tension, they cooked a simple meal of eggs, bacon, toast, and sliced fruit. They sat in silence for a time while Bia looked out the sunny window, her mind full of questions. Bia took a deep breath and turned back to the piece of toast she had been holding. I'm a monster. I is a monster. Camilla's sudden statement brought Bia's attention back to the present. No, Camilla. Camilla raised her hand to stop Bia. I am different from you. I know this. You saw me last night. I don't know how to apologize enough. Bia chewed her lip, but remained silent as Camilla continued. I am unsure when I first came to be. It has been many winters since I woke up here. She motioned around the cabin. I had no directions, but an impulse to protect this land. I feel a connection to it, and I can sense everything that's here. Each tree, each creature, the snow, ice, rocks. It is like a web connected to the ends of my nerves. My only company all these years have been the sprites and spirits that inhabit the land. Bea's brain could only process so much information at once. She'd always had the suspicion that there was some basis of supernatural beings to exist, but the confirmation was making her head spin. I'm sure you saw a glimpse of the little fire sprite that helped me out yesterday. Bea nodded slightly, remembering what she thought was a glare, too bright for her to make out any details, but out of place in a coolly lit cabin. There was a long stretch of silence as Bea chewed on a bit of her toast. And Camilla sat statuesque, her food untouched. Why can't you leave? Bea finally pushed the question out that has been swirling around her mind. The question wouldn't let her think about anything else. She and Camilla had bonded. There was a connection, and yet Camilla still would not leave this prison with her. This is a cage, isn't it? I don't want you to have to live your life in a cell. Bea's voice cracked as she spoke. Shock painted Camilla's face. She never thought of this place as a prison. It was always just how it was. She longed for another existence outside of it, but accepted it could never be the case. I am not chained here. I just cannot. Bea stood suddenly and put a hand over her chest. I want you to be unchained. I want you to see the world. And I want to be by your side. Camilla looked up at Bea with a sad smile. Cold tears stung her eyes. In another world, perhaps I could go. Bea stepped forwards and kneeled next to Camilla. I want to show you the entire world. The whole world, sorry. Whether it's in this world or the next. Ah. Bea unhooks her mother's necklace and places it in Camilla's hand. No, Bea. Bea shakes her head. I want you to keep this, so you know that my promise is unbreakable. Camilla holds the necklace to her hollow chest, then holds out her pinky to Bea, who takes it immediately. They smile, but the moment of happiness was fleeting. The ground began to shake. Bea lost her balance, while kneeling and fell to her bottom. Camilla stood with a frightened look on her face. No, what's happening? The shaking grew more intense, and Camilla looked at Bea with tears in her eyes. It's the end of winter. Her normally steady voice shook. I've resisted the natural order for things for long enough. The land is angry. Bea climbed to her feet and rushed to the door, swinging it open. Camilla, come on! Camilla reached out but then stopped. She shook her head, tears now streaking her cheeks like frozen streams. I cannot. Have you tried? Camilla stared steadily at Bea, understanding her resolve. Trust me. Camilla reached out, their fingers just brushing, before something flung Bea out, slamming the door shut behind her. Wow. We're back out here. Bea was shot out and landed in a pile of slush snow, knocking the breath from her. Dazed, disorientated, and panicked, she hoisted herself to her knees and found herself at a rest stop. So that was all just a dream then. Bea scrambled to her feet, recognizing the trail she had begun only days before. The rest stop, which had been covered in a blanket of snow when her journey began, was now slick with melted snow, and clearly man-made. Benches and little signs that had been hidden beneath the snow were now clearly visible. No. No, 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 no! Bea's thoughts raced. This magic BS is really starting to get to me. Her body ached, dazed of sleeping on a small, lumpy couch, and the stress of being in the unknown made her temper short, and her mind clouded. It may have been several days of high stress and strange companionship, but she wasn't going to let Camilla stay caged. And she sure as hell wasn't going to go back to living her everyday life when she knew Camilla was suffering in her own way. Ah, that's it. I'm going back. Blank you, Forrest. Camilla's coming with me. I'm freeing her. With a yell of invigoration, Bea ran back into the half-melted forest beyond the rest stop barrier. Pine needles whipped her cheeks as she dodged roots and slick, uneven ground. She turned left then right, then left again, running deeper into the forest and attempted to retrace her steps, but it was impossible. She ran herself into the ground. She fell to her knees, wheezing. Frustration was starting to ebb, and then compounding fatigue was starting to hit her oxygen-deprived body. Her chest ached, and her legs wobbled as she attempted to stand back up. Banging herself against a tree, she took an uneasy step forward, then another. Her foot sank. Her heel slipped on loose, wet soil, and she tumbled down a short hill, rolling, and finally hitting the rock bottom. The bottom hard. Gasping for air and trying to get her bearings, she turned onto her side. Pain racked her hips and shoulders. She was not soaked from the snow slush and couldn't tell if she was bleeding or not. She took 2 more calming breaths before shakily returning to her feet. Bea screwed her face in pain, but bit her lip and marched forward. I'm not someone you can just push around here. I'm not leaving till I get back to that cabin. Despite the pain, Bea pushed forward. This path was definitely familiar, reminded her of where she first saw Camilla, ethereal, bright and beautiful. Bea realized that the cabin must be close then. She crazed a small slope and saw it, a small clearing up ahead. She ran. Her body screamed, but she ran. Her legs were numb. It felt like she was running in quicksand. The harder she tried to run, the slower and slower she ran. But she ran. Bea tried to call out to Camilla, but she barely made a noise, a fish out of water gasping for air. The cabin materialized through the trees, and Bea collapsed at the base of the stairs. Camilla! Bea was able to gasp out finally. Catching her breath in a moment, Bea half crawled up the stairs of the cabin, craning her head to see Camilla inside. But it was empty. The cabin door hung ajar, sunlight streaming into the dark interior, illuminating its emptiness. Camilla! Bea stepped inside, panic edging into her voice. Camilla! Bea searched the whole cabin with increasing agitation. Camilla! Camilla! Please? Please, why? The end of her questions hung in the stillness of the cabin air. Dust motes laced the silent responses. Bea suddenly froze. The necklace. Sit in the pool of sunshine, a heart-shaped pendant lay, lightly frosted with ice. Bea hesitantly touched it. It was cold. So cold. She picked it up and held it into her chest. Bea walked slowly to the top of the cabin stairs and cried. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. I was supposed to show you the whole world and explore cities with you. We were supposed to have a happily ever after. Bea's words came out in broken sobs. Her body felt destroyed, broken and incredibly drained. She sat down, warming her face in the new spring sun and letting her tears flow unchecked. The spring is beautiful, isn't it, Camilla? Ah, developed for Winter Jam 2020. That was quite a sweet story between these 2 different characters. And the fact that it was definitely very near for spring, most definitely. But I quite like little adventures like this where it has its own little universe in it. And how we came to this character who has an ability to spawn food into the cabin. Like, that was apparent. It wasn't like she gathered it, she summoned it. And she also apparently knew what what Bea likes. So we have that for each other. And it doesn't matter how far one gets in life, there's always going to be someone out there for everyone. A person, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, everything like that. It doesn't matter about what that is, or what this is, or what one person believes in, and what that person believes in. As long as that person is nice, then it's all good. Tundra Flame, programmer, editor, director. Ah, Beer. The sun will rise once again, and the winter will come once again. Oh, is that a necklace with a snowflake on it? That could be a necklace with a snowflake on it, because it's got a little bit of string to it, doesn't it now? Ah, she is crying, but it's sort of a happy cry. Tears of joy, tears of happiness. At least the mouth is upside down. Is this it? Is this how far we go? We don't go back to the main menu? Nope. Do we have to wait for this to end? I think that's what it might be, actually. We have to wait for the song to end. Or maybe not. I don't know. Okay, folks. That is Yearning for Spring. I think we could all yearn for a bit of spring right now because of current conditions in the world. Although if you live in Australia or anywhere in the southern hemisphere... Oh, there we go. If you live anywhere in the southern hemisphere, you're probably enjoying your time right now because, well, we can go outside and we can be apart from others, despite being in households, by the way. What? Well, I thought it went to the main menu, but apparently it went to another CG. Okay, let's see. Gallery. There wasn't any choices in this game. So we got BGs, sprites. Oh, that's actually really nice. Different sprites of the characters. That's really nice. It's even got with the jacket as well. Oh gosh, it's even got her evil incarnation too. So, she definitely is not human. Maybe she was once a human, but is now bound into the realms of this forest, entwined in it. Maybe this was the original place that she was either born or died in, Camellia. And she felt it growing around her here. It's like, this was like the beginning of her apocalypse, going through this scenario. Wow. And there's this, which is like, it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what your eye color is. Oh, that's cute. It doesn't matter about your outside. It's what's on the inside that really makes you become attached to a person emotionally. So thank you so much for watching, guys. This is Yearning for Spring. If there's anything in this game in which you think that I haven't discovered for myself, then please put a comment down in the description below. Please like and comment and subscribe if you have not done so already. There's a link down in the description below where you'll be able to find this game for yourselves. It's absolutely for free, and as you saw in the credits, it is part of last year's Winter Jam. Yes, I can officially say it's last year because this was recorded in 2021 and not 2020, even though the game came out in 2020, didn't it? Or did it came out published 2 days ago, which would have been on New Year's Eve. So yeah, technically it came out in 2020, but wouldn't be able to play until 2021 because of sleep. But there we go. Also on the website, there's some ciphers. Not ciphers, but like there's like a cipher you need to decode in this game, which is up on the Itch.io page. It's like someone put like a string of words into the comment section, and I have no idea on how or where you would discover these string of words in the game. Oh, it's just I'll use Route 13 as a cipher to avoid spoiling it for people who haven't played it yet. Okay, I see. Ah. My bad. I thought there was literally a cipher in the game which you had to uncover using a cipher method. But it's just me. So thank you all so much for watching, guys. This has been Yearning for Spring, and we shall see each other's in the next video. Hopefully you all have a wonderful day, and a wonderful 2021, and take care of yourselves.